So in the last video, we showed you how you can take your application from your local development environment and you can deploy it to a live production infrastructure on your account, on your own cloud account, whether that is Amazon or DigitalOcean or wherever that may be. So this time, what we're going to show is how you can take that same application that's already up live, receiving requests, serving traffic, and how you can resize that initial default server, small 512 megs of RAM, and resize that server, and with very minimal effort. So here we have the application that we launched last time, and just as a reminder, it doesn't do much. It just says, hello world. In here in the dashboard, we see that we have our server here. So if I want to scale that server, I just click on the scale, and I've got all of the options available to me that are available within my cloud hosting account. So if this was AWS, I would have much more options. DigitalOcean has the following options. So let's just say that the small half a gig of RAM isn't cutting it, and I need to scale up to a 2 gig of RAM, 2 core, and 40 gig disk. So all I would have to do here is scale this up, or I could just go to 1 gig. I guess let's just go up one step further. So and I can see that now I'll have 1 gig of RAM, 1 CPU core, 30 gigs of disk. I hit save, and I just need to confirm that what we're about to do is that Nanobox is about to provision a new server on your account, and then it's going to transfer all of the components. So during the kind of the last phase of the sync, certain individual components will be briefly unavailable. But considering the amount of work that's actually happening, and really considering all of the things that you don't have to do for this to happen, it's really easy to swallow. So as you may remember, in the first in the previous demo, when we first launched this app, we saw a process that looked very similar. In fact, it's going to be identical up to a certain point. We are again ordering an additional server. This time, it's slightly bigger than the previous, per our selection there, and it's going to do the same thing that it did in the first time when we first launched this app to deploy to it. Is going to install updates. It's going to configure the firewall, set up the virtual network, install Docker, just kind of tidy up and generally lock down security. But additionally, what's going to happen this time, which is really cool, is since this is the second node, Nanobox is actually going to go back to the first node, and it's going to say, hey, you need to make an exception in your firewall for this new server, and in this new server, it's going to say, make an exception for this previous one. And once they are talking to each other, the virtual network will be updated, and then they'll actually be able to talk to each other. So it's really cool, just the amount of effort that is involved that you just don't have to worry about, that you don't have to do yourself. And again, it's going to install the platform services, and that's because we're essentially replacing the original. So it's going to install all of the platform services. So it's going to install these Docker images again. Then it's going to, once the Docker images are installed, it's going to start up the containers, configure them, get them all up and running. And essentially what you're going to have at that point is you're going to have two servers that are running the identical setup. So all of the components that were running on the first server will also be running on this new one. And then Nanobox will start a migration process that is going to take any of the data, any of the configuration from the original components, and it's going to migrate that data, so you can see that happening now, migrate that over to the new instance. So all of your logs, all of the warehouse deploy runtimes and builds, all of your routing mesh, just all of that configuration is now getting migrated to the new server. And it is doing so over the virtual network that Nanobox configured. And since Nanobox has also configured the firewalls to be able to talk to each other, it's doing so securely. And looks like it's just migrating the health stats over. Okay, so all right, so now that the platform has been moved over, the last thing to move over is just any app components. And where this application is so simple and minimal, it just has the web component. So there won't be any data to move over. If we had specified a database in this app, it would do the same thing. It would bring the database, and it would migrate the data. And we'll actually go into that process in a little bit more detail later on. But in this demonstration, we're just resizing the original server. And okay, looks like the new server is all set up and ready to go. So the last thing to do for Nanobox is it's just going to remove all of the old processes, the containers, and then lastly, it's actually going to cancel that server on your account. So you'll just be left with the one. So looks like that process has completed, and so we have everything completely migrated over, the platform services, the app components, but this time our server is now 1 gig of RAM instead of the 512. And so let's go ahead and see if the app is still up and running, and it is. So without experiencing complete outage and downtime and hours associated, Nanobox was able to very, very quickly and succinctly scale, allow us to resize the individual server that we're on. So hopefully that's been helpful to kind of wrap your head around how Nanobox handles resizing and scale. And if you'd stay tuned, in the next one, really cool, we're going to go into how you can take your web components or even platform components and break them out of this individual server and scale them in a horizontally scalable cluster. And that's pretty cool stuff. So I encourage you to stay tuned. So thanks for joining.